What is going on, boys and girls of YouTube? We're back with another video just for you guys. We're breaking down the tier list a little bit more. We're doing A+ tier today. If you haven't seen, we've already done SS and S tier in one video because there are not that many gods between the two. A+ is long, so it's going to be its own bracket. We're going to talk it through. If you guys are confused about anything, ask your questions in the comments below, and I got you. Hit the like button, make sure you're subscribed, and let's do this thing real quick because I know it's a lot. And I know you guys have your favorite gods that you want to hear about or talk about or figure out or understand why they're doing well or why they're getting pooped on. That's what we're going to do. So A+ starts with Achilles. Achilles is one of those gods that I don't think will ever fully fall out of the meta down to like dead, where Osiris kind of is right now. If you look at win rates, Osiris is the lowest win rate in the game at like 42%. It's not even close. Achilles will never be there. It just won't happen. His 2 is too strong, and having it execute as well as a sun in your kit, as long as you can get through laning phase, you're fine, which is where his biggest struggle is. His laning phase can be bad against some of these gods, and that's why he's an A+ and not any higher. Anhur's seen a big boost in gameplay. He went from like B+ A-ish to A+, very, very strong, played all the time. Now we shifted from a crit meta into an AA meta, and now we're back into a mix between AA and then your final items being a Deathbringer and your starter being a crit starter. So you finish those at the end of your build, which still works for him. His passive is really strong. His lane clear is good, and there's a lot of fighting in the lane, which is kind of making him excel more than he was for the earlier part of the year, the last 7 months or whatever it's been. He's just very strong at fighting, and you have a lot of aggressive supports being played. Bacchus, that combo is kind of filthy. Kuzimbo's in the meta right now as one of the top supports in the game. Shiva gets played at support. Horus gets played. It's just a lot of combo aggression fighting that's possible now. And with the builds and everything, it just works out for Anhur, where crit builds just didn't really work out for him. Kind of nice. I actually enjoy playing Anhur. Probably one of my favorite hunters to play right now, outside of Artemis. If you guys have seen the Artemis video yesterday. Athena is number 3, this third on this list. A simple support that you can play at all levels very, very easily. Can actually be kind of put over in the solo lane and have a solid laning phase and solid rotations because of the ultimate. Big thing with Athena is beads burning in ranked because of how separated everyone stays. Very rare is there tons of grouping and 5-man running around. So Athena gets to pick beads out for free, which causes free kills for the jungler, free kills for the mage. Everybody kind of just gets free kills off of Athena. And with how tanky Guardians are for the first 35 minutes of the game, you can kind of free grab those beads and then disengage. So there isn't a lot of downside to playing Athena. Outside of the fact that a lot of laning phases do not go in your favor because she doesn't necessarily fight perfectly for levels 1, 2, or 3. Her level 3 is decent, because by then you have all the abilities. But she doesn't clear insane and she doesn't fight insane for that early game. So you have to pair it with the right hunters, or you have to know your matchups to make sure it works. She does counter some gods that are played right now, like Bacchus Belch. I don't know why I can't speak. Can be taunted out and canceled. Abilities like that are really important for Athena to play around and counter. And that's why she's doing well. Baba Yaga, because Baba can build defense and not die and stack it for free. It's that simple. Bacchus, we talked about his pairing with Anhur. He's very aggressive and his fight is strong. He's pumping out a lot of damage, and most Guardian supports are able to grab 1 or 2 damage items and still at cap defense. That is why he's there. Cern, they added the cripple to his 2. It buffed him up a lot. His ability to burn objectives, his 1v1 fighting, his up close fighting against assassins is a lot better than the other hunters because of the passive, and just overall having a big CC ult paired with a cripple into these high mobility gods that are going to be diving him. It works out. I would not put him much higher because he's not the safest. It's actually, as good as he is at CCing and being annoying, he can also be countered by leaping and avoiding that CC and then just staying on top of him. Karin comes to ranked on Tuesday. So today I'm recording this. This will go live Saturday. He'll be in ranked. They just nerfed him, so they're already expecting him to be a little bit better than I did initially. I felt like he's good. I think most people don't know how to play against him yet because they haven't played against him. So we'll kind of learn and see how that goes. He's got a good team fight. He's very annoying, and he has a lot of mobility. So that's why he's an A+. Chronos is an A+. Why? Split push potential in a meta where split pushing has come back really, really hard. If you've seen, there's a Mercury that runs around and only split pushes. That's all he does. His name is, there's a couple of them, but the main guy that I've seen, his name is ranked 4v5. I watched him play in a game last night. He had 22,000 structure damage. His account is hidden. If it wasn't, I would do a video on him. So what I'm going to do is I have a match ID from someone else, and we're gonna do a video on that guy, so be prepared for that. Just a little spoiler. But yeah, Chronos split push is hot, really good. Plays like a mage while also having really good AAs because of the kit. So you don't really build AA on Chronos, you build mage build, you kind of one shot, but you also have the autos from the two. Also the reset. He just has really safe fighting and laning and rotating and grouping over what most mages do not, especially with the amount of CC that he has. Cleo, I'm about to the point where I want to move Cleo down, but she's still pumping out enough damage that I'm leaving her an A+. She has a very, very high damage output in all stages of the game. So until that changes or something counters her extra hard, we'll move her. That's when we'll move her down. Until then, she's staying there. Cucullin, actually one of the few warriors that did well into the Guardians in the solo lane. Had a good matchup into Yorm when he was, peaking, and still is one of the best solo laner Guardians of the game. And that's why he is where he is. He has good matchups. He's got a good team fight. He has a lot of CC, and he's hyper aggressive. Hyper aggression and ranked is very valuable. Danza, a lot of CC on his kit. Just a lot of CC. He's not the best hunter, but there's a dude who plays him solo and goes a sigil into 2 damage items. I actually have the video on YouTube. I think there's 2 videos because I've run it and I also watched him. And then he goes tank. And the amount of CC he has when you have a high CDR kit in your tanky is kind of wild. It's really ridiculous. As an ADC, he's also not bad. Mix of a high ability damage as well as still hitting really hard with your autos. I don't mind Danza. I would never put him any higher than A+, and I could see you arguing him down to A, but I would put him in A+. Discordia, high CC, good for the team, and then really just the ult in the late game hits so hard. It is so easy to land because of the travel speed that they changed it to like last year, I think, or the year before. Kind of hard to not have her in A+. The biggest thing is the lower ranked you are, the worse she does, because it's really hard to play around yourself and not around 4 teammates, and in lower ranks people don't group, so it's a little bit hard to play disco in those situations. Freya, I actually want to move her up. I'm not going to because this is, I made this tier list a couple days ago. I made this tier list around the time that Freya started getting played. Like, she was not being touched for a long time, and then you start seeing her occasionally. Now you see her all the time. She's killing it in the duo lane. Her late game is pretty much unmatched. People always ask what gods are hyper carries. She's one of the few that I would truly say is a hyper carry. The other argument would be Kali, but Kali, really, once Kali has 3 items online, she's kind of where she's going to be the rest of the game. Freya just keeps getting more and more scary to everybody. That's why she is where she is. Plus, she has the Martikar style ult, so she can buy herself time. People hate playing against those style of ults. They think they're OP. Ganesha, high CC support. Really strong support because of the fact that he's a silence as a hard CC, and it's really frustrating to play against. A well-placed ultimate can win you a team fight. That's not always the case with these Guardians, especially as a support player, so that's why he's an A+. Hachi, I think the tier list before this, he was S or SS tier. They nerfed his passive a bit, and they nerfed his 1 a bit, so it's brought him down, kind of evened him out. He has very good laning phase. He's super safe and he has good team fights, but he's not anywhere near a must-pick ADC or OP. Hebo. Everyone says Hebo's OP when they're getting pooped on by Hebo, but then they play Hebo, they get pooped on themselves. If you early pick Hebo in a draft, he'll get counterpicked by really a ton of stuff. There's a bunch of gods in the jungle, Fenrir, Dodgy, that will hard counter the Hebo. There's a ton of Guardians that will hard counter the Hebo. There's a bunch of warriors that will hard counter the Hebo. So early picking Hebo is risky. The damage output from Hebo is still there. It's not quite what it was before the item nerfs, and I won't say he's not one-shotting, but it's not as common to just instantly bop somebody up and one-shot them with current builds and with current farm mechanics and the way the game plays out. I do like Hebo. Just make sure you don't early pick it. That's why he's an A+. Heimdall, because of his 3. His 3 keeps him insanely safe. He has a good amount of CC and he hits really hard. Heimdall's always in the meta when it's an AA meta and usually out of the meta when it's a crit meta. So here he is. Ichel. I believe Ichel is still very strong. I had her much higher in the initial tier list. I think she's that good, but people can't play her. And people don't know how to play with her on teammates. Like as teammates, in team fights. That is why I've moved her down a little bit. She is one of those gods that requires a huge understanding of where that specific type of play style fits in a team fight, because you have to frontline a lot with her, which is very difficult. So you're almost like in a mix of like the mid line where you're behind your front line, but you need to be hitting there. It's a crazy positioning, but good players on her are disgusting. The amount of CC, healing, sustain she has in her kit is ridiculous, and her damage output is very high. So she's A+. Izanami's A+ because of lane control. She's the best clearing hunter in the game. She guarantees you have pressure in lane. That's why she's A+. That's it. Merlin, similar to Izanami, where Merlin was at the top of the meta when he could full clear the wave at level 1 and no one else could. That was OP. That's not needed anymore. Once you get into the lane, you hit level 2, you are level 2, and it's just kind of even clearing. He's got decent matchups into a bunch of people. But the thing is, he can control the wave clear and then still fight afterwards and have abilities up, where no other mage is really doing that, and that's why he's an A+. Morgan Le Fay, just the spam potential and how annoying she is to play against because she has a lot of CC. She's also good against most assassins, as long as you don't early pick her and get countered by your knock-up immune assassins, Fenrir, Dodgy, really anyone that can just avoid it. She'll be a good pick. Naja, high CC. That's simple. He can be countered by Magi's and beads, and that's why he's not any higher. She's not any higher. I honestly always forget whether, I think Naja's a boy, right? I always forget. Nemesis, this was an overplacement. I think I placed Nemesis too high here. I think them should have been A. I don't think Nemesis is bad, but because they've gutted the ult so hard, the ult used to be 50% health and I think like 50% protections. Now I think it's 20% health and 20% protections. It's been gutted super hard. The one doesn't do enough damage to put into the kit and have, you know, reliable burst out of it. So a lot of people the results of it are a lot of people go A and M, and A and M isn't even that strong right now. It's like a mix of them is how you want to play her. But realistically, I think they need to fix her ult, or I'd move her back to A. Nike, probably the highest winning warrior, I think, in Smite right now, if you look at win rates. I believe the reason it is because people don't know how to counter Nike. If you lane against a Nike and you play a guy that can interrupt the one, Nike doesn't have any clear, and it's a really easy laning phase, and then Nike falls off really hard. Makes her easier to gank because she's always dealing with creeps. She's always late to her buffs. So that's how you beat Nike, and why Nike isn't any higher. I do have her an A+ though, because obviously she's doing well. Nox, A+. I like Nox as a support. I don't like it anywhere else. I think Nox support is probably one of the hardest supports to play against while being run at. Where if you're running at the Nox, it's less of a big deal. If you're a defensive Nox, you don't feel as strong, but you're still playable. Most Guardians, if you're defensive, you kind of just, it's really hard to play if you're an aggressive Guardian. If you're like an Ares, or honestly, even if you're playing one of the Warriors playing Shiva and they're running at you and being aggressive and the other team is aggressive on you, it's very hard to play because you're not a really a peel Guardian. Where Nox can still play that style, that defensive style, but then when Nox is aggressive, it's kind of over because she's consistently burning beads on cooldown over and over again. And that's why she's A+. Pele, it's a knock-up god that overkills. So she does enough damage to guarantee one person, but usually once that person's dead, she's dead in late game team fights, which is why I don't have her in your higher, but that's enough of a reason to put her in A+ in my opinion. Poseidon, I like him as a jungler more than a mid. He can be played as a mid. It's a good mage jungler because of the quick move it, the quick clear, one of the few mages that can keep up with the Golden Blade assassins in terms of clear. And then team fighting wise, it's a massive team fight all with the cripple. A lot of people aren't building Aegis. You get to a point where you can kill these assassins and these guardians, or sorry, assassins and warriors who are diving, but don't have Aegis. So I like Poseidon for that reason. Ra would be higher if he wasn't so position dependent. If you are not a perfect positioning Ra, you will get pooped on. If you are perfectly positioning and you're hitting your ults, you'll pretty much auto win the game, and you create so much control for your team from the backline. It's crazy. That's why he's A+. Rama, A meta. Rama's in the meta. Not OP. Can definitely be played around and doesn't automatically win lane. That's why he's A+. Ratatosker, performing fairly well, honestly, when people are playing him correctly. Hits very hard with the 5 Acorn Blast Acorn. Can be played in the solo with a tankier Acorn, and really just that mix and match playstyle where you could swap them around or do whatever you want is why I have him a little bit higher than A. I have him an A+. On top of that, it's a semi-global ult with a knockup, and knockups are just way too OP to not recognize all the time. Scylla. Had this conversation with Oleon while we were playing ranked the other day. Scylla, to me, for the last year and a half, should be an S tier mage. I don't put her in S tier because a lot of people seem to disagree. She doesn't get prioritized on a lot of games, doesn't get prioritized in SPL. And I always felt like I didn't see something that caused her to be worse. I fully believe now that since Conduit Gem makes it so you full clear early, she has no downside. Her downside only argument I ever made was that she couldn't clear early. Now she full clears right away with Conduit Gem. So that's gone. She's one of the safest mages, if not the safest mage in the game. She has a very long range dash that she can throw out ahead of time and then move around and dash back, so it can be extra long. She then can follow it up with a CC immune ult where she's super fast. Between those two, paired with a root CC, heavy combo abilities where they synergize well, big mage damage. Her 2 hits as hard as any mage ability in the game, and then an ultimate that hits even harder than the 2 and resets the ultimate. I believe she, like, in my mind, if this was just based on me playing gods and me, what I've seen alone, I'd have her in S tier, and I think she's probably the best mage next to Janice, and I think Scylla does fairly well into Janice. So I'd have her up here. I always bump her down a little bit because people seem to argue with it. I believe if you're a mid laner and if you can't play, especially if you don't have the Janice playstyle down, which is difficult. Janice is not an easy playstyle to pick up for most people. Spam Scylla. It is super basic. You run around. I'm dying. You run around, you press 1, you press 2, and that's it. And then you reset, semi-reset, sit back, wait for him to come back up. You use the build on Smite Swords, is pumps. It is insane. The Polynomicon build is nuts. After Scylla, we're on Serqet. I pooped on Serqet a lot and said she was donezo when they nerfed her 1 pen shred and they nerfed, or they buffed Spectral, so they nerfed crit indirectly. I thought she was dead. You don't need to build crit on her. You never did. People are not building Spectral if you have 1 crit item. It's just not happening. It's super rare. So if you go Deathbringer 4th, 5th, or 6th item in the build, most people won't have Spectral. It just won't happen. And pair that with the ultimate having the crit that gives to your whole kit. That Deathbringer is enough. It's not going to be super reliable, but it will be enough crit for you to just one-shot people. And she's performing very well in the hands of anyone who can consistently land double taunts. Landing the 2 on both people, getting double taunts in, it's pretty GG. I don't know if Hi-Rez knows this or if it was on purpose or what, but they buffed. So when the Serqet taunts somebody, when you throw your 2 at somebody, they start autoing you or the closest person. They'll start autoing their teammates, whatever. If you taunt 2 people, so if your 2 goes out, you throw 2, you go boom, right? If you throw it right and left and hit both people, they'll start autoing each other. Those autos used to be heavily reduced down to like 20% damage, if not less than that. So they'd auto each other and they do no damage. Right now, and this whole year, whenever they changed Serqet on her ult, this started happening. You taunt the 2 and they do like 75% A damage. I have a video, a short, where we went into practice and I managed to get somebody to kill the other person off of just autoing each other from the 2. So I think that goes a little under the radar on top of the rest of her kit, her ICC, her true damage, the percent damage for her passive, the anti-heal from the ultimate. I believe she's very strong as a jungler. The biggest thing you have to watch out for is being counterpicked or playing against a team comp that has a lot of cripples in it. Sobek, very good setup and hard to kill. So he's an A+. Laning phase is honestly not that bad. He's very disruptive. Soul, I have her here because of her split push potential and because her mage build is actually really deadly in team fights. If you're playing a pure AA Soul, I think you're kind of hindering yourself and limiting what you're capable of doing. If you go a Mage Soul with a Polynomicon, that burst damage and the consistent AA damage is still there without the items, without the AA items. So you get to do a mix of both. She's good at shredding objectives, can solo pyro, can easily 2-man gold. If you have a soul in the mid and you have a hunter in the duo, then you have 2 AA gods. You can burn fire very easily. I like soul a lot when it's a good soul player, but if it's someone who has never played soul, I hate it. So Wukong, he fell down a little bit in one of the earlier patches, and then with the build changes, I thought he was going to perform a little bit worse. Then when I made this tier list around that time, it was pretty clear Wukong's solid. He's got a good laning phase. His team fight isn't as good because he used to guaranteed one-shot a mage or a hunter in the backline, and that's not happening right now because you have to go a hybrid build or you'll die first. So that's a little bit of the trade-off, but I like him because his landing phase is usually very much controlled by him. He's got good poke. He has good CC. He's very safe between the 3 and the ultimate, and that just makes him a solid soul laner to consistently play. Terra, as a support only, the high CC and the annoying playstyle of her is what puts her over the top and why I have her at A+. And then the ultimate is just big in team fights. It's very unknown to your average player how good that ultimate is. They just don't pay attention to it, but it's a super strong ultimate. But if you're playing Terra, you're not being annoying, you're not spam rooting people, you're not running around trying to be frustrating, you're not blocking them off with the walls on the 2, you're not stunning them to just be as frustrating as possible, then probably play anything else other than Terra. Thanatos doesn't fall off anymore, so it's hard to put him below A+. Thanatos' problem for 8 years was, oh, Thanatos late game is worthless. Not the case anymore. The damage output is still very high. The 2 pen shred is still there, so that's making him perform even better than he should be. And then an execute put in the kit. Can't go wrong with that. Biggest thing about Thanatos and why he's not higher is because he's high risk, high reward. It's a low mobility god where if you miss an ability, you will be turned on. But if you hit that ability, you're probably going to win that fight instantly. Thoth. I don't have any issues with Thoth, except for the fact that he can be dove. So if a jungler and a solo laner, if you actually have frontline solo laners playing the game properly, that pairing onto a Thoth, the Thoth won't be able to live. He won't be able to survive. He won't be able to play in team fights that are off of his tower. So any fire giants, gold furies, all that stuff, it'll be very difficult for Thoth to play. His ultimate damage is nuts. His 1 cooldown of damage is nuts. The CC from the 2 is actually a lot stronger than people give it, like, really give it credit. Good at burning objectives because of the shield, the wall shield thing that lets autos go through and hit for more. So your hunters get to do more damage. I like Thoth. I just hate the later game team fights when it's a heavy dive comp. So that's what you have to watch out for. Tiamat, very tanky mage, does a lot of damage, hard to kill. Can't really go wrong with him. That's why he's A+. Tier fell down a bit. These guardians are just doing wonders in the soul lane, not the dual lane, in the soul lane against him, and that's why he's not at the peak, because he does not counter gods like Yorm. He doesn't do perfect. He doesn't do all that well against gods like Kuzimbo and everyone else. His team fight's still pretty strong. A lot of cripple gods are being played right now and prioritized, so that's why he is where he is. Vulcan, ever since they made the one not be able to be crippled, I've thought he kind of just wasn't valued too much. I think his damage is good. With the current mage builds and the loss of power, you can feel how much damage he lost, though. A+ is safe for me because I think his laning phase is fairly good. He usually has good control of the lane. And then his rotations are solid because that ultimate's coming out of nowhere. The problem I have with Vulcan is that ultimate is not consistent. There are very few people who are playing Vulcan and are landing that ult consistently in a match, in multiple matches. Most people hit 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 ults on Vulcan. If you do that on Kukulkan, you'd be worthless, right? So it's kind of the same boat with Vulcan. It is really, really bad to be not able to consistently land the ults. I think it's just too easy for the other team to react. And if you have any sense of the game and you have any brain function, you can dodge most Vulcan ults. Just how it works out. So that's why he's A+ and not any higher. And I could see the argument made for A. I really want them to change the way the ult works a little bit, make him a little bit better. And I kind of feel like his 2 is worthless outside of the first 5, 6 levels. So I'd love for those 2 items to get tweaked, or abilities. Yemoja, ult on a really long cooldown, and that's why she's A+. If that ult was on a shorter cooldown and was easier for people to get off more times in a game, then she'd be higher. It's that simple. She's got high CC, good mobility for the team, and that ultimate will win you team fights if you're using it properly. Wukong, people, dude, the craziest thing. I don't know. I think it was a Reddit post, a Facebook post when people were looking at the tier list. They were like, Wukong in A+, you can't even hit his abilities. Bro, if you can't hit Wukong abilities, it's because you are bad. His 2 is good. His 2 root, I think his 2 is his root, right? Is very good, and it's not hard to hit. It's not even about telegraphing or anything like that. It's not difficult to hit. You're using it incorrectly. You're running straight at them and trying to hit abilities that you shouldn't be when you're missing. That's the only way. The problem with Wukong is your average player doesn't realize how hard the 1 hits. That 1 is an insane amount of poke damage that is impossible to miss. And then they can't land the ultimate because they just are not good enough. That becomes a you problem for those Redditors and those Facebook people. That's because the god takes an ounce of skill or just put a little bit of time into the god to figure out how everything works. And then you'll be able to land the stuff. If you can't, it's because you're bad. I'm sorry. The god has insane setup and CC out of the ultimate and great peel. The 3 is one of the best movement and teams, really life-saving team fight movement abilities in the game. And then you have a root and pen shred on the 1, which hits very, very hard. It's a high damage mage, can be played over walls, hits harder than you realize, and that ultimate, if you are landing it, is borderline broken. It's a major team fight disruptor that hits very, very, very hard, and that's why he's A+. So these are my A+ gods. If you want me to do the A tier, I will. I'd really rather, I mean, really, if you want to see A and B and C, let me know. I'd break these 2 down into another one. I don't really think there's a lot to talk about these, and I hope they get buffed or tweaked. We'll see. A tier, I think, is pretty generic. It's a lot of gods that are lacking on something, like they're either lacking CC or mobility or team fight or something along those lines. A lot of these gods, you can just go look at the win rates. If you Google Smite win rates, there's 2 websites. Look in the right corner. If it doesn't say patch 10.7, then it's out of date and not accurate. There's one that is out of date, and then the other one is correct. It's up to date. Just look at the correct one. Look at the win rates. You can see a lot of these gods are performing like crazy. But then a lot of these gods are also, especially a lot of these B gods, are down there. Like I said, Osiris has the lowest win rate in the game by a lot. I think King Arthur is right behind him. But I think that's a little bit of user error. So I have him here, but just to explain. So that's A+. Hopefully you guys liked the video. Hit the like button if you did. Make sure you subscribed, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow, the next day, and the next day.